call this meeting to order of the Parks and Public Works Committee. And first things, roll call. You got everybody right?
Here.
All right, everybody's here. And next is agenda approval. Anybody anything to say about the agenda?
Let's approve it.
Huh?
I make a motion.
There's been a suggestion to add the rate study. Somehow we managed to forget to add that to the discussion section. Number 4, utility rate study. Can we add that on there?
Make a motion to approve it with that addition.
Second.
All right, we're approved. We're going to add an item 4, discussion of the utility rate study. And I think Mr. Gamble is going to be presenting that. All right. Next is public comment. Is there anybody here for public comment? Doesn't look like we have any public people. So let's close public comment and move on to the approval of the minutes dated November 19th.
Move to approve.
Second.
We're approved. And agenda bill 24-126, amendment to landscape maintenance agreements for Snoqualmie Parkway and other ROWs, mini parks and facilities. Andrew, do you know who's going to talk to us about this one? Okay, right.
Hi, good afternoon, Parks and Public Works Committee. This agenda bill is looking to extend the landscape services contract, extend 3 landscape service agreements with At Work through the year 2025, as well as increase the scope of the maintenance to include additional right-of-way locations and select parks. There are 3 separate landscape agreements, and they are set to expire at the end of December 2024. The agreements provide an extension option for each agreement for up to 2 one-year terms based on the Consumer Price Index, which is 4.3%. The current 3 agreements are based on bid pricing received in 2021, which is included in Exhibit 1. The initial bidding in 2021 didn't get enough interest and competition, so we split it into 3 separate contracts and rebid it, which explains why there's three contracts that we're working with. Those 3 contracts are mini parks, facilities, and then Snoqualmie Parkway and other right-of-ways within the city. When we bid it, At Work was the lowest bidder by a good margin, and they provide equal pricing for 2021, 2020, or 2022, 2023, and 2024, where other contractors had kind of a tiered pricing more consistent with inflation. Based on those bid results and the annual pricing, we don't anticipate additional cost savings by rebidding this for the 2025 landscape service, and that's why we're coming to you with the extension of the agreements through the year 2025. And then this is more related to the budget impact statement, but these agreements are paid out of different funds. So the facilities comes out of facility maintenance, the parks comes out of parks, and then Snoqualmie Parkway and right-of-ways is split between stormwater utilities because a good majority of the parkway includes a bioswale. So that would be a stormwater facility, and then also streets, since those are part of the right-of-way. And with that, I will take any questions.
What are the added things?
Yes, those are included.
Is that the maps?
Yeah, Exhibit 2 contract addenda. There's some additional maps, but I can summarize them. Center Street, the landscape strips along Center Street, and then a handful of planter beds in the downtown area along River Street, the new ones at King, and Maple and parts of the downtown area adjacent to the railroad park. That's for right away, and then additional parks included some area near the Elderberry open space, as well as it's Fairview Park and a trail.
Councilmember Cotton?
Just wanted to know, so I had seen the additions you were talking about. In kind of the right of way additions, this was on the addendum 1 on the January 3. There, the some of the street right of ways, I don't know if it's sidewalk connections, but, and then in historic downtown as well, several of the streets. It said that these areas will need to be visited twice a year, April and August. Yet I do see them out there like weekly doing like, during the regular season, doing mowing and things like that. Is it just there's certain things that they're only gonna do in those 2 times? There's mentioning of things like weeding and spraying and mulching and pruning, those types of things. Are they only doing that twice a year then?
Some of the services are twice a year, other ones are more frequent.
Okay.
The weeding and the spraying, I think, is twice a year. If it includes mowing, that is a higher frequency.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I see them out there like, well, at least downtown every Monday.
Right, yeah, a lot of the mowing is weekly. I think the majority of I mentioned that they're landscape beds that were added.
Yeah.
That's gonna be more of a twice a year type schedule.
And then one other question on that same addendum, there's a listing for something called pre-emergent. What kind of services is pre-emergent?
It's bear with me, I'm an engineer, but not a
No,
landscaper.
It's a horticultural term.
Or,
Pre-emergent prevents seeds from germinating, so it prevents weeds before they start.
And you do that by,
You spread it. It's called a product, usually the product you can get from the hardware store is called preen.
oh, okay, okay,
it's a proactive weed control.
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Cute, I didn't know you're a green thumb. I guess this is really more about killing plants, isn't it?
That's right.
Okay, well, that answers my question.
Well, you ask good questions, so thank you for asking those questions. Anything else we need to know about this?
So the grass section along the railroad track,
Yes,
is
Is that
that,
actually grass? Is that a grass section? We're,
there's
bring up
some
the
that's
map. there's a
adjacent.
big green section there,
It's
which
a-
looks like new grass we're going to mow, or old grass we're going to mow.
And it's along the sidewalk, the Centennial sidewalk.
Well, it's
and-
on both sides of the track.
Yeah, but it's up to the fence, the city fence that's along the Centennial sidewalk. Is that the area you're talking about?
Well,
are you talking
Yeah.
about B?
can we bring up the item
B5, B6?
two on it? So my question though is how much of that is railroad right of way versus city owned property? We've had discussions in the past of
Who
railroad
maintains it?
maintaining some right of way sections. And in the past, we've actually gone and whacked some things down because it got out of hand. I'm just, we should hold all our residents accountable for doing their yard work.
So is this is along Railroad Avenue? Excellent, okay. Near the church there, yes.
In front of the church.
Yeah, on the way heading towards North Bend.
I think it's page 5 and attachment 2.
And you can just take that homework assignment to look on. If it's railroad right of way, they should take care of it. If it's city property, yeah, I got no argument here.
Yeah.
We'll look into that.
Okay.
Maybe I can get you an answer on that. I'm not sure.
I know there's on the other end of town in relation to that, it's kind of that no man's land, and we're having actually, interesting story, one of our homeless population woman has been doing all the weeding on Northern, where the, the gate is for the train to cross over, and to keep the azaleas.
I've
alive.
seen her doing,
Yeah, she's the homeless woman that lives in her car.
oh, I didn't know that.
She parks down.
Well, she's doing great work.
She's doing absolutely great work. And so, but it is one of those no man land, like, who takes care of it? Cause the foliage will grow up and block the stop sign and, that kind of stuff. So she's taken it upon herself to maintain that little plot of area down there.
So this is a King County parcel viewer, and I'm struggling with the small screen. This is the area in question. This parcel is owned by the church and the city for public parking. And this parcel is hiding it from me, so I'm trying to figure out.
That's probably the parcel we're talking about.
Struggling. My screen is this big. Yes.
Basement, there you go.
No, I don't wanna.
Utility.
There you go. So most of the grass appears to be on our property
Okay.
in that area, judging by the aerial photo.
Can you go to the other end of town at Northern? If you don't mind, please.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if we really have no man's land in the city. We have our
It's
land that
over
other
on
people
Park.
have built on,
It's
but I
it's over on-
we haven't really.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
I know, but it's struggling because I'm not plugged into the internet.
I think you're doing great.
Please. I'm out.
I will admit that there's a lot of these small parcels, that come into question. We research whose responsibility is it? And there are some that are not in these contracts that we're working on getting them added in. This amendment is an example of a big improvement, but we know there's going to be more out there, and I wouldn't call it a living document, but where each year we review it and we make changes, and we may come forward with one in 2025 for additional areas. I think that's mainly on the ridge, but areas behind sidewalks come up a lot. They're very small
Yeah.
strips, but
Yeah.
it does look better when they're maintained.
Whose responsibility is that big tree right there?
Ours.
And are we picking up property?
We're not picking up property. We're just refining the contract. There's been especially the right of way one. It's several hundred pages and a lot of maps with detailed areas, and I think there's some improvements that can be made to it.
Chair, he's good.
Oh, sorry.
So when the original bid was done and they prepared the maps, they used the GIS polygons that were existing. So for example, the maintenance of the Parkway Trail, they chose the trail polygon, which is why they're maintaining only from the street to the outside edge of the trail. They're not going 3 feet beyond that trail because the polygon ended at the trail. So these fine tuning, we're trying to correct those errors in mapping that we created when we originally bid the project.
So the increase in price that I saw, a big chunk of it was just CPI stuff. Is this refining of the map, is that also going to increase the cost of the contract, or is that just clarifying responsibilities?
No, that there is also a breakout of the additional costs for the new areas. So it specifically the mini parks and the right of ways also include, it's in the background section, but additional scope.
Oh, yeah.
The
okay.
CPI costs
Yeah.
about 21,000. The expanded scope is $28,000.
Okay. All right, yeah. Do you have something else or are you just waving your glasses around?
I just wait with that.
All right,
Can we send this to consent?
consent?
Yeah, no objection to consent.
All right, let's put it on consent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that brings us to a discussion about the windstorm, if I'm remembering right. November 19th windstorm report. Usually we have people go around back.
I apologize.
Don't do that. You encourage him.
So I thought these trees of yours were supposed to keep the wind out. It's not working.
Nature's tested
No,
that
it's
theory.
actually a very good lesson. Look at the trees that blew down. You'll find a lot of them have very flat root balls.
Yeah, there's no,
They're root pans. And what he's doing is actually to address that.
Well,
And bringing
thank
in the
you.
wind to clear those out.
That's right. Yeah, we just ordered it up.
That's what
Yeah.
we're doing.
So, yeah, quick presentation here just to let you know what the impacts were. We did fare better than our neighbors. Downslope for once got it worse than Snoqualmie. So Issaquah, Sammamish, Miramont really got hit hard. It was unusual for us because it was a really specific area. So the valley didn't get hit very hard and the top of the hill, the top of the ridge did not either, but the middle of the ridge got hit in some areas very hard. So you can see a summary there of some of the details. We don't have a recorded max gust, but we know it was in excess of 50 miles per hour. What happened is the power went out and all of the sensors and so on, the wind gauges weren't working. So we don't know how strong the winds were, but they were strong. And then we operated through the night on the storm, except for the middle of the night when it was frankly too dangerous for anyone to be out there. So basically we got people home into their neighborhoods, into their homes, suspended operations, and then picked up again in the morning. So I want to show you some pictures of what we dealt with. So lots of blocked right-of-ways, lots of streets. Actually, there are about 6 or 7 streets that were entirely blocked. We managed to free up by commute time on Wednesday morning. This is the morning and the days afterwards, so you can see some of the impacts there. So Vaughan Street, that tree was across the entire entrance to the neighborhood, and we managed to get people home by cutting half of the road, half of the tree away from the road. And then we were too scared to be out there, so we went away and we managed to get people home. The damage that you're seeing, the worst of it, truthfully, is the sidewalk. The house on the top left and the house on the bottom right, pretty much no damage. Just the tips of those trees were on those houses. So, we were lucky in that sense. I wanted to show you there was a pattern to where the impacts occurred. So some neighborhoods were hit very hard. Probably the worst was Fairway, Cascade, and Fairway Place. 33 tree failures, all of them ash. The Fern and Raven neighborhood, 16 trees. Along Thompson Avenue, 9 trees, and then along Kinsey, 7 trees. So there were some specific areas hit quite hard. And then some conclusions. So there's a pattern that we're seeing year after year. Our larger street trees in SR1, the first phase of the development, are the ones that are blowing over. And over 50% of the ones that blew over street trees this time were ash. So there's a clear pattern there. So what we're going to do, I'd already mentioned this in a prior storm, but we're going to relook at how we're choosing which streets to replace the trees on first. This is teaching us something. We're learning from this, so we need to adapt and evolve and change that priority, frankly. And then the other thing is, it was very, very challenging that night to communicate between police, fire, and ourselves. Cell wasn't working, landlines weren't working. So radio was really our mode of communication that worked and was reliable. And so we're going to look at how can we improve that, because we know this is going to happen again. So in a nutshell, that's what I have. Any questions?
certainly if the radio is the way to communicate, I mean, you know, at the fire station, we have the Emergency Operations Center, which is a bunch of setup of basically a dispatch center with radio mics and such, and they're reforming and getting the old CCAS that the police used to run. That's we've got volunteers now working on that, and they're getting all the radio antennas have been refurbished and such at the fire station. So maybe that might be something where we have to, at least for those types of communications, it was kind of set for if we needed to, like during the floods, where sometimes we have to do our own dispatching for emergency vehicles. But it could certainly be used for that type of situation as well. So we kind of have the infrastructure in place for that.
Thank you.
Great job, you guys. I mean, the fact that you were out there all night is pretty amazing.
Are there any particular areas that you're foreseeing as new priorities for planting? Are there specific ones that you're?
Yeah, so at this point, the Fairway Place, Fairway and Cascade are a mess. We've lost a lot of canopy, a lot of trees there. So that would be something that jumps to mind. Similarly with Fern and Raven. Those are two areas that look much worse now than they did a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Thank you. Right. And Mr. Gamble, I think you're up, right? The utility rate study?
Okay. Good evening, Parks and Public Works Committee. Let's see, so I'm going to go ahead and get this PowerPoint presentation prepared. I believe Sergey does not need introduction any further, of course, but Sergey is here with me to go over the kind of the last steps here, the rate study. Had our meeting 2 weeks ago to kind of go over how to implement, I guess, that final detail. And what we're here tonight is to kind of showcase, well, actually, maybe another way of thinking of it has been, we've been looking at this as all the pieces. So how do we look at the revenue requirements and then build up to what that need looks like? And how do we balance bonds? And then how do we balance across customer classes? And so we've had a very fine-tooth comb pick apart of all the details here. And a lot of what we're going to be showing you now is kind of the information that you might need to adopt it into our code. So how do we actually convert all the information and the materials you've been going over into essentially a codifiable utility rate update. So that is where we're going to go. Obviously, we're going to talk about that right now. And so you'll kind of see it in a slightly different format. And we're going to work through all the utilities and demonstrate that. But I'll let Sergey kick it off and we will get going.
Thank you, Dylan, and good evening, committee members. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
Just there.
Well, it looks like Dylan's already sharing the presentation, so we'll dive right in and we'll try to keep it as brief as possible for today's discussion because I know we've been having frequent touch points. So if we go to the next slide, our agenda is fairly light. We're just going to fly through their background. I don't think we need to focus on that, at least during the committee meeting. The overview, just to keep on kind of repeating and educating through that process, and then we'll just dive right into the rate design. So on the next slide, this is very similar to the slide from the 19th during the windstorm that we had. We just added the additional meeting that we had. So we have been meeting and working on the study for close to a year now, not including the fiscal health review, and we're getting towards that end kind of finish line for the rates portion of the analysis. Our focus today will be on that final rates for all the utilities based on the feedback we received during the last meeting. Now, a quick update on the revenue requirement. It did sound like during some internal discussions, staff indicated that they will no longer be needing additional FTEs for the sewer utility in 2028. So we did modify and edit the scenario. Now you'll notice the rate strategy did not change. What did change is the total debt assumed for the alternative. So if you look to the right of the table, the upper table, which was the original table you've been seeing throughout, and then the second table, which summarizes the updated version, the debt has gone down by about $400,000 or so. So the elimination of the positions in 2028 for the sewer utility reduced the amount of debt that we were anticipating in the prior versions, but the rate strategy still remains the same. On this slide, the cost of service, because the revenue requirement remains the same, there are no changes on the cost of service, just from a high level. I know we've been talking about this, but classes of service, like the multifamily class of service, which has been paying more than their allocated share cost, is either frozen in place or increased below average increase to allow them to reduce over time proportionally towards cost of service. Classes that have not been paying their allocated share costs, like the commercial class, for the high commercial for the sewer utility, or the potable irrigation for the water utility, they are increased slightly above average to allow them to catch up over that time horizon over time and move towards cost of service. So again, no changes from our prior discussions here. Lastly, before we dive into the rate design, again, it's a three-step process. Now we're at that last step. The first two focused on the big picture. How much revenue do we need to bring in, and how do we spread it by class? Now we're looking at the actual fixed charges we assess on a monthly basis, the volume charges by class of service. Again, the purpose of rate design and what we'll be talking about today is to develop a structure that collects appropriate dollars that we have identified and worked to through the revenue requirement and cost of service. But also, in addition to that, we want to make sure that we capture any goals and objectives of the utility. And as you can see on the next slide, a lot of times these goals and objectives are either connected or inverse of each other. We might be focusing on revenue stability and focus on fixed charges, or conservation and focus on variable charges. So here, what's important to remember is there's not a one-size-fits-all solution, one structure that just accomplishes everything. We really need to figure out what we want to accomplish and then align a structure to do so. Now, our last time when we met, during the 19th, we talked about some of the potential alternative structures for consideration. And during that time, because the main focus was the collection of total revenues, so the direction we received is that let's keep things as they are now from a structure perspective and just apply the increases proportionally based on the cost of service phase-in. So what you're seeing here is a summary of the current rates in 2024 that are in effect now. They are split into fixed charges, which are the upper portion of the table. They are summarized by class of service, which scales by meter size for the residential, commercial, and irrigation, potable irrigation classes. And there's a multifamily per unit fee as well that is fixed per month. There is also a volume rate, which is summarized in the second portion of the table. The residential volume fee is based on an inverted or increasing block structure. Once you exceed a certain threshold, you start paying more for that incremental usage of water. And then a uniform rate for multifamily, commercial, and potable irrigation, which doesn't change with the amount of water. If you're using 1 or 100 cubic or 1,000 cubic feet of water, every 100 cubic feet costs the same per unit. So in order for us to incorporate the overall increases, since we're not changing any structures, we're simply passing through the increases on an across-the-board basis. So on this slide, you'll see the summary of the 6-year forecast for the residential and multifamily classes. As a reminder, the residential class is going up about 5.75%. So each of these annual figures are increasing 5.75 for residential rates. So our 3/4 inch fee, which is the most common fee for a typical residential home of $39.17, will go up to about $41.42 next year, and then gradually getting up to about $54 by 2030. As you can see, the multifamily per unit rate will stay constant throughout the whole time period. You'll see the same trend for the volume rates. The volume rates for the residential customers are increasing at 5.75%, multifamily staying the same. On the next slide, you'll see the similar summary for the commercial class of service. Here, the increases are around 7% in the first year, close to 6.7% next year, and then decreasing to about 6.5%, and then 5% in the last 2 years. So gradual increases anywhere from 7% down to about 5% per year. Lastly, the potable rates are simply increasing 9.5% for 4 years and then 8.5% per year for the last 2. So same logic applies. The percentage increases are applied proportionally. On the next slide, you'll see a summary of the sewer utility. Here, the majority of the rates are made up of a fixed charge, and only the commercial rates have a volumetric component. Now, the volumetric component only kicks in after 600 cubic feet or 6 CCF per month. And the volumetric component does scale for a low commercial versus high commercial. The higher the strength, the greater the charge. Similar to the water utility, the direction we received is that at this time, we're not looking at making any significant structural changes. We did some big changes in 2016, and we're still transitioning our classes towards cost of service. So at this point, we're again going to be applying the increases on an across-the-board basis for each class. On this slide, you'll see the summary of all because we're able to easily fit all the rates in one slide instead of spacing them out. So you can see that residential classes are going up from $84.62 currently to about by 18.5% for the first year to $100 per month, and then gradually to $117 over time. Multifamily has a slight increase, about 7% in the first year, 2% the second year, and then staying constant thereafter. And then commercial low will go up about 21% the first year, 6.5% and 2.5% thereafter. Commercial high about 27%, 11% rounding up there, and then around 6 to 6.25% thereafter. And then the last slide for the actual tables themselves with the rates is the stormwater utility. Here the rates are increasing based on a 7.5% rate adjustment, and they're on a per equivalent service unit basis, which is applicable to all classes of service. Each home is one service unit, while non-residential customers pay based on their square footage, but per ESU fee is applicable to all classes and customers alike. So with that, on the next slide, just bringing back the comparison of an average increase, and these averages do fluctuate. We had to take a look at average statistics, but the bigger the class, the bigger the volatility of the type of customer that you will have. A commercial customer might have a greater range of number of units or volume consumption that they use. But again, to keep it simple, we wanted to look at the average, and this is the same table that you have been seeing. Because we are using the across-the-board method, without changing any structures, this table is still consistent and still applies from our prior presentations. Here you can see the typical bill for a residential home is currently about $177.46. The first year, an average user could see a 12% increase approximately, followed by a 6% next year, and then around 4.5% to 4.25% per year adjustment thereafter for a combined bill for all three utilities. A typical multifamily customer could see around 4.6% in the first year, 2% the second year, and around 1% thereafter. Commercial low is similar to the residential class at around 12.6 or 12.7 the first year, around 7% the second year, and then around 5 to 4.75% thereafter. Lastly, commercial high is around 19% the first year, 9.25 or so rounding there, and then close to 7 to 6% per year thereafter. So really that brings us to the end. Very brief discussion today, just moving forward from our prior meeting on the 19th, applying the rates themselves and showing you what those unit costs would look like. Looking for any additional feedback that you may have after the kind of the discussion we had last time, showing you the actual rates today. And again, the goal is still to have these rates effective as early as January of this upcoming year of 2025.
Thank you. Councilman Holloway, you got your hand up.
Okay, I'll take it. So we're gonna have one council meeting between now and the end of the year. How are you gonna have rates set by January 1?
Yeah, we were discussing this and we were working through the reality of that, and it's probably more likely that we're be looking more towards February. We put as early as because we want to make sure that it was logistically impossible before we made it not an option. We're gonna look into exactly how we're charging, when we charge our customers for the billing and when we could implement the new rates and how quickly the turnaround could be. More likely, I think it'll be in February, assuming that there's a 2 meeting for the ordinance review. That would be the first council meeting in January, followed by the second council meeting in January, assuming there's no edits needed. With that in mind, then it would take a few days to implement the ordinance, and we would probably be therefore implementing at the beginning of February, or the very tail end of January. Need to go grab a calendar to look exactly what date falls on what, but yeah, more likely than not, I think the answer is February.
If you don't have an agenda bill tonight to go to council
We,
next
yeah,
week,
do not, yeah,
you're not making January.
no, we are not making
Good.
January, no.
You need to talk in definitive terms there. You're not making January. Go figure out another date.
The only reason we left is because we weren't certain if it was adopted by the end of January, if it would retroactively count towards the billing for that month. But I see what you mean.
Councilmember Cotton.
Will there be like a round table for with this utility rate study for the rest of the council?
In theory, what we could do is, one of the reasons we're right here now and not bringing you an ordinance of this material is to have that check-in point. This is essentially final form. We'll more or less convert the materials you see here into an ordinance form and be bringing it back. But for next council meeting, we are available to go over any of the details and not in ordinance form yet. Roundtable
Both
or
do council
otherwise.
meetings before it becomes effective.
Yeah, but as far as doing the presentation during a council meeting, or will we, again, need a round table prior to?
I think that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm correct in understanding that we are presenting this to council on Monday night.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
This same
Okay.
presentation.
During the,
Yeah.
during the regular meeting.
Yep, that would be the ideal next step. And then we would hopefully bring you that ordinance on, I think it's January 3rd is the next Parks and Public Works Committee, or maybe it's the 7th. Let me double check, but it's the first one.
I believe we need to add it to the agenda for Monday night.
Can we
be
add that to
presented.
the agenda for Monday night? Is there an F&A meeting between now and then?
Yes.
We'll add it.
We don't need to do it roundtable.
One point that I would want to make, and I would be very interested in both of your opinions on this, is that we've hectored Mr. Tarasov to make adjustments in this plan that we thought were necessary. Is there anything that we've seen in this plan or not seen in this plan that you feel is wanting? I'll give you my impression is that we've adjusted these numbers to where we were more comfortable with them. And we've had really good discussions about that and adjusted things, and they've come right back with those adjustments. I do feel that one of our responsibilities when this comes forward to council is to have come up with something that we feel we can recommend to council. Otherwise, we're just wasting Mr. Tarasov's time. Is there anything that we've missed that you guys, in your opinions? I'm not saying speak for the whole council or anything like that, but in your opinions, is there anything that we haven't addressed with this plan?
Well, I see that, like, exactly as you said, we've gone back and forth with it. We've had them change numbers so we could see it and, gone with our, like, the initial response to something and like, oh, no, I don't like that. And let's, tweak that. Wondering how to present it to council, like we've done that where without starting from square one again with them. And like you said, going through the whole presentation again, other than us giving our support.
Well, I think that if we're able to articulate our thinking with some of the numbers, that would be, for me, and I can't remember which slide it is, Mr. Tarasov, but there's one with just the overall,
Like all
that's the one.
categories.
That's the one, yeah. This one really, for me, shows what we were trying to accomplish. We were trying to accomplish right-sizing the bill for multifamily and, not kicking residential too much in the teeth or commercial. From my perspective, these were the things that I was concerned about. I also didn't want, we do need to get, commercial caught up kind of, but, some of the things that we made sure of was that there wasn't any increase in the 20s. That, yes, there is an increase for multifamily in 25 that's more significant than the other years, but it's not, we got that to a point that we felt was not, unreasonable. And again, I'm sharing my perspectives on this and, but I think that if we can articulate that to council, it might make the process more streamlined.
Agree.
Councilmember Holloway?
So would you have, basically in my head, it breaks down 2 slides. One slide says, here's when we met with you, dear council. And a one-liner of, and here was the subject. Then you go through and we remind them, we had these discussions, let's not do it again in a polite way. And then maybe one slide which says, and based on the discussions, here's the planning assumptions we think we got from you, dear council. Okay, such as, don't crank them too high. Keep multifamily where it is, let the others catch up. Just list those out in bullets. And at least broach the subject, or couch the subject there, that we've had the discussions. Based on the discussions, here are the planning assumptions we got. I interpret this presentation here as kind of the last, oh honey, are you sure? Before you head out the door.
I wonder if, we still have that slide that we were just looking at, Mr. Tarasov, that, in my opinion, represents kind of the endpoint goal that we
Endpoint.
were going for.
Yeah.
I wonder if we have that slide as it was when we were first discussing this, and
Or the graphs that showed like where commercial was, where irrigation was, and where multifamily was, and how we had to make those adjustments.
right.
There was a graph that showed who was
Yeah,
who was
who was
too
above
high,
the line, who was below the line.
low.
If it would be possible to just show that, the progression from where we started and what this slide represents as, and I think something like that might make it really easy for council to digest at least what this committee was trying to do. It doesn't mean that they're going to agree with it, but it would at least give them an indicator of what we were attempting to accomplish.
So I'd like to see just a little bit more detail of the findings of the cost service to show them what we found and why we're recommending the tables. Okay.
Yeah, but I think also just to be able to go into that detail, but to show the broad strokes as well, I think might be really valuable.
Yeah. Like
Does that make sense?
Like a show your work, what we've been doing, why, and the why should be shown in the graphs, then results should be shown here. and
Yeah,
kinda
you
make
show
that
your
narrative.
work and then we'll take credit for it.
No, I completely understand what you mean.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that something like that might streamline the discussion for the full council.
Okay.
So that we can be more efficient about that.
So we can do this.
Doesn't, yeah.
We can also have this slideshow prepared.
Yes.
Or would you want
And
to
this
maybe
is,
not?
this is a succinct, straightforward slideshow as well. And maybe if we could just insert
Couple pieces into it.
just where we started and where we are.
Yeah.
Does
Okay.
that make sense?
No, I think I understand in the context of that meeting. I think we can bring.
Do you guys concur with that?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, like those, there was a couple like strategic slides that showed what we were starting with, like exactly as you said, and how we worked through it and then finished it. in our minds, finished it.
Mayor, did you have something you wanted to say? No?
Sounds good.
City Administrator? Good?
Thank you for your diligent work on this. It's more important to Public Works and the Water Division than you really, that was a hard lesson I learned through my career, was how important this process is to actually getting the work done out in the field. So on their behalf, I'll thank you for the
And-
diligence that you showed.
And Mr. Hamlin, does this final slide that we're kind of looking at, does that look like it'll address everything that?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
it does. It does. I want to make sure that I understand, because I know you want us
That's
to
what I was
summarize
talking
kind
about.
of the process that we went through and how we got here. There was that one slide that kind of had that range of reasonableness, you know, is
Right.
that the one that you're
That's the one
talking
we're talking
about? that
There
kind
was,
of-
but there was also the, the slide that we've built up to.
Mhm.
Yeah, this range of reasonableness one is a really important one too, but the slide that we've built up to, that we've arrived at,
Right.
it existed before
Or with
with
different
other
rates.
numbers, some of which we were very uncomfortable with. And to be able to show that and then be able to explain, these are the numbers that we ended up at because we felt that they were easier to swallow for
I c-
all
I-
four categories.
Right, okay. Yeah, I think we can do that. I think we
Okay.
can show that succinctly. It'd be clear.
Right?
Great.
Anything else on that? All right, well then, did you have something else, Mr. Gamble? Thank you, Mr. Drive. Oh, you,
Not on this subject.
Councilman Holloway,
Uh,
yeah.
I'm, we've dropped the subject in my opinion, and I want to make sure it gets back on the table. Are we done with that one?
Which subject?
I thought we were going to discuss the transportation impact fees again.
No, we didn't have that on the agenda.
Okay, let me make clear. That $40 million bridge, there needs to be at least a footnote on there that says $39 million that is state. If you bring that $40 million without clarification that 39 of that is state, I will vote no against it. And I will lobby my peers.
Yeah.
Okay, I do not want a document out there that out of context can be read that we are assuming that bridge costs.
Right. I
Okay,
understand.
make the changes. But I really did thought we had said we'd bring that discussion either back here or F&A, and I'm concerned it got dropped.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I think what was missing there was that the calculation. There is a calculation worksheet where we have all the projects, and then we identify where the funding is coming from, and
Right, and that's the tip.
yeah,
And in context of the tip, makes perfect sense. Out of context of the tip, it can be interpreted.
right. And so we skip that whole page of calculations
Just
and
put
just
a
right
foot-
to it, and yeah, just put a
put a
footnote
footnote
in there to
on
make
there
sure.
to shut
that-
me up.
yeah, I understand. All right, we'll do that.
Is that all it takes? A footnote?
Sometimes. Sometimes a cookie will do it. I don't know.
Are we satisfied?
Yeah.
Last week at this meeting, we weren't able to do the director's report. We didn't put it on the agenda. And I don't know if there's anything, pressing for you to report that we missed last meeting.
No, well, not really. I mean, there's a couple things that I could report. One, the Kimball Creek Bridges project is complete and Meadowbrook Way is open, which is great. Yeah, and
That's
very
good.
happy with the work. Contractor finished it. We got it done about a month earlier than we anticipated. So we're very happy with that project.
I did have a question about that one.
Yeah.
I've driven Meadowbrook a couple times. Neither time did I fall through, which is, I love that. The bridges are a little bouncy though. Is that to be expected or will that eventually be leveled out?
Yeah, so there was a little bit of planning for settlement around the bridge, so they are a little bouncy. We did, at the engineer's, recommendation, we did not add more asphalt to it than we needed to, because we wanted to limit the amount of weight that we are adding to those bridges. So what you'll notice is you're driving down the road, it kind of dips down a little bit and then comes up. So it's a little bit goofy, but I mean, if it's, I'm amazed, I'm kind of surprised you noticed it, but
No, it's not, have you driven it?
not at full speed.
Drive
I
it,
haven't.
drive it at full speed.
Full speed.
So I'm not a physicist or anything like that. If Councilman Johnson was here, he might be able to explain it to us, but it seems to me that when you're bouncing along, you're gonna hit parts of that road harder than others. And I wonder if that's gonna lead to more settling or more wear.
It does
Um,
increase the dynamic load on the bridge. So I will look at that and just, we'll run that past the.
It's a significant bounce.
Is it?
It
Okay.
is.
Or you
And-
could slow down.
Huh?
You could.
Yeah, but what
because-
are the chances anybody's gonna do
Maybe they're
that?
speed bumps. You just don't-
Yeah.
Inverted speed bump.
And I'll say, we put a great deal of effort into getting good compaction around those bridge, the back walls on those bridges, but we did expect some settlement, and it's likely that we're gonna see that, and we'll likely have to do some little bits of overlay in the future to kind of level that out. Just because the material there, what's underneath all that, when we dug it up, is very soft. Right? It's peat and silt, and it goes for over 100 feet in depth. So when we build up a road prism on top of that, you're bound to get a little bit of settlement. In spite of our best efforts at using fabrics and everything else to try to create a solid prism, you're still gonna get some lateral spreading and some reduction, you know, in settlement. I don't anticipate that that's gonna be significant, but will certainly happen. So, you know, we'll maintain that progressively as we move forward. But I'm curious now that you've mentioned that, to go out and drive it and see what that feels like and see if it's something that we need to address. And we'll have our engineers take a look at that.
Right. And then I cut you off. I think there was something else you were gonna mention.
384th. So, I want to mention that all of the sewer work is done on 384th, and that is operational, and that's all complete. Stormwater additions are completed. We have patched the pavement, and we're nearly complete with the sidewalk concrete pour. This winter, we don't want to do a final lift on the actual asphalt paving this winter, because one, it's a little bit late. To get an asphalt plant to make asphalt at this time of year is difficult. They've shut down. They'll open it up for us, but it's not a good time to pave. And it'd be better for us just to patch it now and try to get a good patch on it, so it's not a really rough road, not like it was. It'll be very drivable. But after we let folks drive on it for 3 months, we'll get really good compaction in all those trenches. We'll come back in the spring when when the conditions are better for paving. We'll grind it and then put 2 coats of asphalt on there, and it'll be like a brand new road.
Are there any significant budget impacts in not getting it done in
No.
December?
No, we actually have not. It didn't impact the budget, at least not in any significant way.
All right. Any questions? All right, thank you. I guess we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.